Welcome to the parish church of St Mary the Virgin in the lovely village of Long Crendon. This is the latest video in my childhood churches series, and this was another village I used to come to a lot as a child, around 8 miles from where I grew up. This church is joined with two other churches. One of them is St Nicholas in Netherwinchenden, which was the last church we visited in this series. This one is another absolute beauty, and it's packed with history. It's a Grade 1 listed building, and it was first listed back in the 21st of December 1967. So let's take a look around, and I'll talk about some of the history of the building and the village itself. Most of the church we see today was built by the canons of Notley Abbey over a 30-year period in the mid-13th century, but there is sufficient evidence to show that the nave was built on the footprint of a previous Norman church. This earlier church would have been associated with the Gifford family. They had been granted Crendon. The Long was added later, after the Norman conquest. There is no evidence of an early church in the village, despite the Saxon manor being one of the largest in the area. In 1162, the third Walter Gifford, Earl of Buckingham, gave the church in Crendon, together with its chapels in Cheersley and Netherwinchenden, as part of the endowment for Notley Abbey, which he was founding in the manor's hunting park by the River Tame. But in 1191, his estate passed to a great statesman of the day, William Marshal, the greatest knight in Christendom, who became Earl of Pembroke. He was much involved in the issuing of the Magna Carta and was Regent of England on the death of King John. Marshal was patron of the abbey and a close friend of the abbot. So it's tempting to think that he encouraged the abbey to rebuild and enlarge the parish church of his most important English manor. He had much greater property in Normandy, Wales and Ireland, but if it was not William, his third son Gilbert, who had been destined for the church but unexpectedly inherited the whole estate in 1234, would certainly have been involved. The Marshal male line soon died out, and in 1275 the manor of Crendon was divided into equal parts for the three heirs of one of William Marshal's daughters. The village and its church have thereafter not enjoyed the patronage of any one single leading family, though clerical leadership was provided by the abbot and the canons of Notley Abbey until the dissolution of the monasteries in 1538. Certainly the church was not neglected during this period. The north aisle and transept were widened in the 14th century to make a side chapel. The tower increased in height in the 15th and 16th centuries, and the three porches added at various times. After the dissolution, the income from both the tithes and the land, originally granted by the Giffords, was no longer available to the church. The living was poor, and the large parish of Long Crendon could rarely attract its own vicar. It's not surprising that the village and its church slipped into the shadows. There were no further major church modifications, apart from the insertion of the beautiful dormer tomb which we've just seen. Life in the village mirrored life in many other agricultural communities. Wages were low, even when supplemented by lace making. The surprising development of Long Crendon as one of the main centres in England for the manufacture of needles in the mid-18th century brought some growth and money into the village, but the trade moved to Redditch in the 19th century, leaving much empty and neglected property. It was a poor village, and the condition of the church deteriorated badly. A long-serving Victorian vicar had vicious rows with the churchwarden about leaks. Major repairs had to be made in the early 1890s, in a scheme led by the prominent Victorian architect Sir Arthur Bloomfield. Leaking roofs and windows were repaired, rotten pews were replaced by the wooden chairs, and the galleries on the south and west walls removed. Thankfully, the condition of the church has been maintained and enhanced since then, as prosperity gradually returned to the village with the inflow of commuters and the development of the trading estates nearby. The current window, with its German glass, was inserted in 1888 as a memorial by the Dodwell family, substantial village farmers and tradesmen. It was designed to match the north transept's fine window. Some say that it's rather too wide for the size of the chancel. Inside the church, you'll find many fine brass plaques, most dedicated to the families I've just spoken about. Here we have a beautiful stained glass window of St. George, and it's dedicated to Lieutenant Colonel Arthur P. Holer, who served in Egypt and Palestine and died in 1919. The inscription reads, "Be thou faithful until death, and I will give thee a crown of life." And that's from Revelation 11, verse 10. On the floor, we have some very nice ledger stones. The black one is from 1776. The one in the middle is from 1672, a William Langbaine. And you'll see Oxford written on that a couple of times. Oxford is not very far away from here. And the last one is from 1685, but it's very hard to read. Going back to the nave, you walk through the tower crossing. Inside, there's 8 bells. 3 were added in 1768. The first 5 come from 1552, and these bells were the heaviest in the whole county, the tenor bell weighing 2 tons. The old village inn nearby in the high street over the years kept changing its name as the number of bells in the peal changed, but stopped at the 8 bells. On the floor, we have the worn brass of John Cannon and his wife Agnes. They had 3 sons and 8 daughters. On the wall of the north aisle, you'll find this 14th century stonework. As you can tell, the statue of Virgin and Child is a lot newer. This was added in 1990. This bell frame section dates from the mid-16th century and was made for the original 5 bells in the tower. The bells originally came from Knotley Abbey. Here we can see the magnificent tower that houses the 8 bells. I'd love to hear them one day. There are several interesting gargoyles around the church, believed to be from the 15th century. The graveyard is kept in a really nice condition, and it has a nice mix of old and new gravestones. There's a few war graves here, so I always like to read them out in remembrance of our fallen heroes. Here we have the Lieutenant Colonel, who has the stained glass window dedicated to him. Arthur died on the 7th of March 1919, aged 32. Everywhere you go in the UK, you'll find these graves from the brave men who sacrificed their futures to save ours. If you ever visit a church like this with one or many, I would encourage you to spend a minute and read them so their memories live on. This is Private J.T. Warner from the Oxford and Bucks Light Infantry. He died on the 24th of April 1916, aged just 19. And on the Find a Grave website, it appears that John may have only been 17 years old. I found one more in the graveyard. This is a Private John Robert Ing, also from the Oxford and Bucks Light Infantry. He died on Valentine's Day 1917, aged 34, and his gravestone reads, "The Lord shall give thee rest." John was born in Long Crendon in 1882. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I need to head back to Buckinghamshire to carry on with this series, as I have a few more really interesting churches I want to show you. I'll see you all really soon.